Hello AP students, this is Mrs. Politsky, and I have notes for Chapter 11, Testing and Individual Differences. So as we begin, make sure you have your packet for Chapter 11, and we are going to begin. So how do we measure individual differences? Well, we got to go back and talk a little bit about reliability and validity. So, psychologists use two methods to determine whether the results have significance when measuring or testing for individual differences. And one of the things that we look at is validity. This is a property exhibited by a test that measures what it purports to measure. In other words, if a test is said to measure, let's say, math, the test is about math, okay? Or if the test is about psychology, it should have psychology questions on there. There are some different types of validity. We have face validity, meaning that the test looks like the kind of test that it's supposed to be. So if I look at a test and say, it's got psych questions, it should be a psychology test. Content validity. This is a property exhibited by the test in which each item represents a larger body of knowledge about the subject that it covers. So in an AP class, the test for the most part would have questions that relate to AP psychology. So the most part it would be kind of a higher rigor. Item analysis, the process of examining each question on a test to see how it's related to the objectives being tested. And a criterion validity. This is a property exhibited by the test that accurately measures the performance on the test taker against specific learning goals. Criterion validity is something that you might see on the AP exam or perhaps maybe even on like the ACT. Another item that we need to think about is reliability. This is a property exhibited by a test that yields the same result over and over again. So if I give a test, today and then I give it again in a year, the test kind of has the same results. There is what they call a test-retest reliability. This is a property exhibited by a test on which people get about the same score when they take the test more than once. Another is what we call a split half reliability. And so it's a measure of reliability in which if the test is split into two parts, the individual score is kind of the same. It's kind of comparable on both halves. Standardization and norms. Standardization refers to the administration and scoring guidelines for a test that are the same for each student. So anytime that we talk about tests like Terra Nova or the ACT or the AP exam, these are standardized tests, and they are administered in a specific way, and they are scored in a specific way. The results of the test can be used to draw conclusions about the test takers in regard to the objectives of the test. Comparing the results among test takers, researchers look at norms and statistics. These are used to establish what is called normal curves or what is called a bell curve, like we have below here. Okay, in order to establish norms or that curve, a test must be pre-tested and then scored and plotted. So in a sense, the scores are going to be plotted and they might resemble this bell shape. The normal range, these are basically scores that fall near the middle of the normal distribution. And one of the areas that we look at this is in the scoring of intelligence or IQ, which we're going to talk about a little later in Chapter 11. But individuals who tend to score around 70 or below over the years have been kind of labeled as academically impaired or mentally retarded. Individuals who have scored over 130 have been labeled either as gifted. In some rare cases, they may be labeled as geniuses. Types of tests. Objective tests, these are tests that can be scored easily by a machine, such as multiple choice tests, and have or some kind of selective response. Some of those might include things like the MMPI and the Myers-Briggs type indicator. Subjective tests, these are tests where an individual is given an ambiguous figure in an open-ended situation and asked to describe what they see or to finish a story. Examples of that would be like the TAD or the Rorschach test. Inner rater reliability. This is a measure of how similar two different test scores would score a test. So if we have two people scoring a test and they go back and their scores are roughly the same, we would say that there is this inner rater reliability. Ethics and standards in testings. There's a lot of concerns about confidentiality of the information elicited on test and test results, and how to report results, and how to use tests to compare individuals, and the impact of tests on society as a whole. What do you do with the results of a test? Well, individual results are never supposed to be released. So, for example, like an IQ score is not supposed to be released. Individual results are reported to the test developers and the scores to ensure that the IQ scales remain constant, but only the data that are released are kind of in grouped data. So we look at maybe individuals who are of a certain age, that how they scored on that kind of a test. For tests to be useful, it needs to be interpreted properly. Ethics in testing situations refers not only to how the tests are administered, but also to how they are used and by whom. Thank you very much.